welcome to the Christmas edition of The Wealth Whisperer. Today, I'm going to be talking about a very special principle, which is the power of giving. And I felt it was rather appropriate to bring this topic to the table on such a special day for many people around this world. After all, on this day that it's being released, this episode, and by the way, happy Christmas if you are listening on Christmas Day, and I hope you've had a good one if you're listening after. And if you're listening in the middle of the summer, well, I hope you're looking forward to next Christmas. But today is a celebration. Regardless of your culture or religion or background, it is a globally recognized day where people around the world give and receive presents. And on that note, I felt it was a really good idea to talk about giving in the context of wealth and well-being. So there's been an ancient tradition of tithing or giving to the poor or giving to, charities, etc., in over the course of time, hasn't there, in certain religions. And it's also recognized as a powerful spiritual principle to practice tithing or to give of your resources in some way. And there's a really big reason for that, I believe. And that's what we're going to basically discuss today in this episode. So, here are some powerful quotes that you may or may not have heard before about this very principle. So, here goes. For it is in giving that we receive. And that was by St. Francis of Assisi. The sole meaning of life is to serve humanity, by Leo Tolstoy. We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. And that was Winston Churchill. If you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. If you want happiness for a day, go fishing. If you want happiness for a year, inherit a fortune. If you want happiness for a lifetime, help somebody. And that's a Chinese proverb. So I think it's pretty much globally recognized that the power of giving is a really, really strong principle in this life in terms of your own sense of well-being and the well-being of others. So what giving does, in my estimation, is it proves the principle of abundance. For example, the feeling of I have plenty. Even if you don't feel this way or have much to begin with, if you get this feeling of I have plenty, you take yourself off for a walk in nature and you see the abundance of what nature provides, something shifts in you. Something shifts inside to recognize the abundance of life. If you think about, what you've received over the course of your lifetime, how you were looked after maybe by your parents or carers, and what you've received from life, that's pretty abundant for most people. Most people's experience is an abundance of support and help in terms of starting off in life, if you've been fortunate to receive that. So what thinking and feeling like this does is it opens you up, it shifts your thinking, and it opens your heart. And when your heart opens to this, you're operating from a place of love. And that's, I guess, where the principle of tithing comes, because when you give, you are opening yourself up. So think about a time when you have felt or experienced this for yourself. Have you noticed this? Isn't it even more pleasurable to give presents or to give of your time, energy, resources than it is perhaps sometimes even to receive? I certainly feel a lot more, I feel a lot better inside when I'm giving of myself than when I'm just receiving. However, I do enjoy receiving as well, so I'm not negating the receiving aspect. Of course, it's very important to be open to that too, but it just feels so great to be able to give to somebody and help somebody else. And this is, of course, the complete opposite to when you take from somebody. Now, if you've ever experienced something being taken from you, or perhaps you've taken from somebody else, you'll notice that the feeling is completely the opposite. It's a really horrible feeling. Taking something from somebody which is not freely given comes from a sense of lack and fear that you do not have enough. So you're putting out a completely different energy into the world than when you're operating from a place of love. And this is really important and powerful when you stop and look at it. Now, most people don't take from each other, which is lovely, of course. However, you may well have experienced something having been taken from you and how awful that feels, and actually how awful the person who's doing the taking must feel to even do that in the first place. So let's switch it around again. And when we're talking about giving, of course, it doesn't have to be money, just money either. It can be your time. You can give your time to a volunteer to do something or to help somebody out and do, even if a neighbor, or if it's, maybe go to a hospital or a hospice or somewhere and give of your time, or you help out with a community project, something like that. If you're giving your time or maybe certain resources that you have, it can also be your knowledge and your wisdom that you share with people, or even kindness. If you give of yourself and you're kind to people, that is giving. Even a smile, even just smiling at somebody in the street or on the tube or on a bus or walking down a canal path or the street, whatever. Giving somebody a smile is extremely potent for that person who receives it, if they can receive it. And even if they don't look like they're receiving it, they are. And it makes you feel good to give it, right? So let's talk about what happens when somebody gives somebody something and from the heart. The very act of giving makes you feel good. Of course, it makes other people feel good as well, but principally it makes you feel good. And to be honest, in my experience, this resonates further than you or I can even imagine. And it cannot help but touch and influence others in ways that we may not even believe is possible. And I believe this principle is even backed by science. I think there have been scientific studies done. You only have to Google it. Google giving and scientific research studies or whatever you want to do. But there are loads of interesting articles all about the science of giving. And I can't go into the details here, but just look it up for yourself. Or I think there's something called the science or look up the science of giving or the science of generosity. Those two phrases will enable you to research, from a scientific perspective, the effects of giving. And in that giving, that act of giving, we've already spoken about you feeling more abundant and that you're coming from that place of love. And therefore, energetically speaking, this has been proven time and time again that you will start to, by this very nature of giving, receive more. Whether you receive more love, kindness, money, resources, help, support, whatever it is, by its very nature, what goes around comes around. You don't know from where, you don't know from who, you don't know how necessarily. It's not necessarily going to come back from the same place that you've given it to. It will come to you in different ways. The biggest thing is to let go of any expectations and be open to receiving. So don't be giving just because you're going to get. Be giving and then be open to receiving in whatever form it comes back to you. So just notice those feelings as you do give and really, sit with those feelings and just the feel good factor of giving of yourself in some way. It makes the giver feel good and the receiver. And it can also, especially if you're giving of your time and your resources and your energy, it can bring about an overwhelming sense of compassion and care for that, for the one who's giving, and perhaps gratitude and love and relief for the person who's receiving. So all these energies, all these emotions and feelings are what I would call the upward spiral of human experience. And it's just a wonderful place to be operating in and from for both parties. There's another great quote, which is, "You'll always get out of life what you put in, and you control what you put in." And that was it's attributed to Brian Tracy. So there's a really wonderful film that we watched some years ago now. And that film is called Pay It Forward. And the Pay It Forward principle is beautiful. And I highly recommend that you go and search that film out and watch it. It's extremely moving in so many ways. And it is a beautiful film to illustrate this principle 100%, that small acts of kindness and giving can have far reaching effects. I get goosebumps even just thinking about it now. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful, film to actually demonstrate this practical application of this principle. And when you practice it, if you do already practice it in your life, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But maybe this is the first time you've heard of this kind of principle. And if you start to actually practically apply this in terms of giving of yourself in some way to another, you will experience that sense of wealth, that sense of abundance inside, and your sense of well-being expands, and it impacts every area of your life in such a positive way. So I just thought I would share this message with you on this particular day. But whenever you're listening to it, hopefully it's really appropriate for you. Regardless of your religion, your culture, your background, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we're all human beings. We're all here on this planet at this time, and we're here to help and support each other. At the end of the day, this is a humane practice and a deep principle which, if applied, can have the profoundest effect on your life and the lives of others. Until next time, have a wonderful day.